Welcome to the Backlash at Backlash.com. My name is Rod Van Mecklin, and in this video I'm going to comment briefly on MGTOW and blaming the boomers. Periodically, while listening to some of my favorite vloggers, I hear complaining about the baby boomers, especially among MGTOW. Ironically, this reminds me of feminists in the 60s and 70s, many of whom could be heard repeating the refrain, "Never trust anybody over 30." It's easy for young adults to blame their parents' generation, but the reality is that there is no single generation to blame. Before I get off on a rant, I want to encourage everybody to read David Stockman's book, The Great Deformation. While it focuses on economics, money, and politics, it serves to illustrate that the problems we face today began more than 100 years ago. Another great book is Pat Buchanan's Churchill, Hitler, and the Unnecessary War. In it, he outlines how America's participation in World War I created the Soviet Union and the Third Reich by creating the conditions that led to their formation, and how Winston Churchill and Franklin D. Roosevelt connived to lead the world into a global war that was utterly unnecessary and which laid the foundation for many of the problems we face today. Or you can skip both books and read David Stockman's much shorter article, The Epochal Consequences of Woodrow Wilson's War, linked below. In it, he explains how the entire 20th century was a mistake. Back to blaming boomers. The fact is that every generation is stupid. That's because every generation is just a statistical cohort of people who are born within a culturally identifiable time frame. And as Kay said in Men in Black, quote, "A person is smart. People are dumb, panicky, dangerous animals, and you know it." Close quote. Most members of every generation are clustered around the statistical mean, which means they tend to blindly follow the herd. Every generation also has outliers, individuals, who fall into the third through fifth sigma at the high and low ends of the normal curve. Red pill men and women fall on the high end. And there were plenty of red pill men in the boomer generation. I'm one of them. So is Warren Farrell. So was George Carlin. Ironically, MGTOW who blame boomers forget that second wave feminism, which launched the absurdly vacuous third wave, is a product of the greatest generation. Betty Friedan, Susan Brown Miller, Gloria Steinem, and many others who are foundational to third wave feminism are or were members of the greatest generation. And it was the politicians of my parents' generation who passed so many of the laws that institutionalized misandry. That's not to blame the not so great greatest generation. Like my generation and yours, most of them were just following the herd. That's human nature. I mean, my parents prepared me to live in the 1950s because that was the decade in which they became adults. So rather than get sidetracked by irrelevant issues, MGTOW should focus on the essential issues. As Bern Chapin has said so many times, misandry is primarily a product of the left. Yes, conservatives on the right were painfully slow to catch on, and it took them more than 40 years to stop pandering to feminists and start opposing them. But more and more of them are finally starting to open their eyes. They can be our allies, not the neocons who are just big government progressives on the right. You don't want to be taken in by them. So, what are the essential issues that you should focus on? First, tend to your health. Most of the red pill men who worked with me on the Backlash are dead. Most of those who died were less than 5 years older than me. Some were younger. They focused on fighting misandry, ignored their health, and paid for it with their lives. So first and foremost, take care of yourself. Now, in one of his most recent videos, Sandman carped about boomers who believe in Ray Kurzweil's technological singularity and that we're all going to live to be 1,000 years old. When you hear people express even a little anger to something like that, it hints at unrelated emotional issues, and I don't care to speculate because I respect his work. But I read Eric Drexler's book, Engines of Creation, in 1986, which predates Ray Kurzweil's books by a few years. And Drexler predicted many of the technologies we're starting to witness today, just as Kurzweil did. and that medical technology would start to advance so rapidly that soon we could measure life expectancy in hundreds of years. But even before that, I read Dirk Persons and Sandy Shaw's 1982 book, Life Extension, A Practical Scientific Approach. Now, as Clint Eastwood said in the movie Absolute Power, tomorrow is promised to no one. That's true. But can we really live as though we're going to die tomorrow? Some people do. Some people take it as an excuse to abuse their health. Well, that's their choice. I'm not going to shed any tears over people who intentionally abuse themselves because they figure, well, life's a beach and then you die. But others use the specter of overpopulation as an argument against extending our productive lifespans, but the baked-in-the-cake birth trends indicate that global population will peak by 2050 and begin to decline. Read Fred Pierce's book. Let's see, what's that? The Population Implosion or something like that. He explains it all in there. So by 2050, we'll be glad for the automation that's going to take over most of the jobs now performed by humans because there won't be enough of us to do them. After your health, focus on your financial fitness. While I disagree with Aaron Clary's dim outlook for our future, I'm very impressed by the financial and life advice he provides, and I recommend that you read all of his books. Like Bern Chapin, I'm out to get rich beyond my wildest dreams of avarice. Not so I can live a life of ease and comfort, but because I want to change the world, or at least influence it. I want to have the money to work on what I want, support whom I want, make movies like Matrix, maybe turn L. Neil Smith's Brooch series into movies, and a lot more. To me, that would be great fun. And you could work toward a life like that too. Why not? Now I have a question before I end this video. Is it just me, or are white women, especially upper middle class white women, in the habit of blocking hallways, aisles, doors, and sidewalks? It's long been my experience that they do, especially the ones in their 40s and 50s. And every time I have to squeeze past them, I'm tempted to stop and say, check your privilege. That's all for now. Check out the other videos, subscribe to the channel. For the Backlash at backlash.com, my name is Rod Van Mecklin.